Turkey's anti-LGBTQ plus Erdoğan takes aim at LGBT forces in election victory speech. The president, who has held the position since 2014, was just elected to a third 5-year term over the weekend. The president went on to say that, speak out against our LGBTQ plus community, saying, quote, "In our culture, family is sacred. No one can interfere. We will strangle anyone who dares to touch it," end quote. At another rally before the election, he said LGBTQ in Turkey will not emerge. At another electoral rally, he affirmed his party will, quote, "never be pro-LGBT because family is sacred to us," end quote. Similar to the statements he made over the weekend after winning re-election. Throughout his whole campaign, the president put a heavy emphasis on striking down the LGBTQ plus community, seeking support from his Islamist base to win re-election. Many of his speeches accused opposition of undermining family values and being infiltrated by powerful LGBTQ plus networks, sometimes even hinting they are being run by foreign paymasters, framing the queerness as cultural terrorism of the West. Anti-LGBTQ plus sentiment has been on the rise there for a number of years, where pride parades are banned and queer people report feeling afraid of what's to come in the future. And, you know, it looked like he wasn't going to win re-election. Originally, the polls showed he was not even going to. This was a runoff election. The original one was about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it didn't even look like it would go to a runoff. Then it did, because neither main candidate got 50%, and now it looks like he has won again. And Turkey has always been one of those countries that sits in the middle. We can't just say, screw you about LGBT, because they are sort of that NATO buffer that goes between, you know, an open civilized society and the old Eastern Bloc, now essentially just Russia's domination. So we can't ignore them, but we have to look at these authoritarian democracies that are continuing to come for us.
Yeah, the storyline is, again, authoritarian democracies coming, or authoritarian dictators coming against the LGBTQ plus community as their weapon of kind of mass destruction. And they're using the cultural wars, similar to what we're doing here in our own country, yep, with authoritarian leaders that are trying to rise to power here in our own state.
Yeah.
So, you know, the comparisons couldn't be any more clear.
Yeah. We were talking earlier about COVID. In COVID, we talked a lot about NATO. And NATO has actually expanded, right, because of the war in the Ukraine. Mm-hmm. And Turkey's a member of NATO. And now is really time for NATO to step up. It is unacceptable in 2023 that a president of any country can use our community the way that he's targeting. He's basically putting targets on the backs of every LGBTQ person mm-hmm. in Turkey.
Yeah, using words like strangle and
right.
we're attacking their family unit.
Yeah, it's not acceptable, and I'm really expecting NATO to come down heavy on Turkey. His whole election is suspect mm-hmm. because the way elections run over there, even though they call it a democracy, when you're in power, you're in charge of the media. So he had an unlimited amount of media, and his opponents had 36 minutes total in all the time that they've been running.
Oh, really?
To have anything put anywhere, which is, they're pretty sure that's the only reason why he won, is because he controlled all the narrative and all the language. And he said, like, we're making this war against gay people, you need to go vote for me or they're gonna come take over the country. Yeah. And he used those two things to win. That's not a democracy.
No.
Right? And so this is not acceptable. NATO needs to step up and step up quick.
Yeah.
I mean, the way that I look at it, you know, I love how everyone pins us against the wall as this very dangerous community. And, you know, we're coming for your families. And, you know, on one side of that conversation, I'm sitting there going, that's right, you know, and you're like, you know, be afraid of us. But at the same time, you know, as tough as we are as a community, like you said, you know, this is putting a target on the backs of our European, you know, all of our neighbors, our brothers and sisters and our neighbors across the ocean. And we're looking at this because here, I mean, we see how it plays out here, right? And Black trans lives and the deaths, and they're piling up. In in some of these countries, like Turkey, for instance, people can just disappear. And so this is, it's a human rights issue now.
Right.
And I think that everyone should have their eyes on her.
And the other thing, just to throw in real quick, what is this thing with families acting like they're the only ones with families? I have a really big family.
Yeah.
Why do they act like they're the only ones
me.
and they love me to death? Why do they, he's like, they're coming to take our family? What are you talking about? We all have families.
Yeah.
Like, we don't want your family.
Well, it's state-sponsored hate, state-sponsored discrimination. And before we move on, I just think it's worth pointing out that LGBT has been an oppressed class for centuries.
Yeah.
The Jews have been an oppressed class for millennia. It wasn't like Hitler came to power and all of a sudden said, Jews, that's who we're going to pick.
Yes.
Jews were already looked out at by the side of the eyes of Christians, Catholicism, other religions, Islam, certainly. And then the state came in, the German state came in and riled everybody up and said, these are the people to blame. And eventually we're like, yes, go ahead and attack them. But in the beginning, it was, we're not going to protect them and you can do whatever you want. And that's what's happening in Turkey. That's what's happening here in America. There are state-sponsored where they say, you know what, we're going to put into law, these people aren't as good. These people are lesser. And then, you know what's going to happen? We're already seeing it. Increased attacks on trans community, increased attacks on the LGBT community, increased attacks on people of color community. So this is a playbook that is not at all new. And it's something when we look at Turkey, we need to say, okay, how much is this mirroring America as we go forward?
Yeah, absolutely.
We are Queer News Tonight, the world's first and only live daily LGBTQ+ evening news show from Happening Out Television Network. In the model of PBS and NPR, we educate, inform, and entertain by supporting the 10 pillars of the LGBTQ+ community, with more than 100,000 a week watching on Roku, Apple Television, and other channels. To keep the stories going, we accept donations with 100% transparency. Stay updated and live authentically with Queer News Tonight.